Have you ever wondered how some companies just seem to execute flawlessly, turning big ideas into real-world results, while others don't? Well, today, we're pulling back the curtain on the blueprint they use. It's a framework called Organizational Project Management, or OPM for short. Let's dive in. It really all comes down to this one question. You've seen it happen, right? A company has this big, splashy kickoff for a new strategic vision. Everyone's excited. And then a year goes by, and not much has actually changed. There's this massive canyon between the strategy dreamt up in the boardroom and the actual work happening on the ground. That gap, that's exactly the problem OPM is built to fix. So what is this OPM thing, really? Think of it like the nervous system of your company. It's the connective tissue that links that high-level strategy directly to the projects you decide to fund and execute. It's all about making sure that every single project, no matter how big or small, is actively pushing the entire organization toward its most important goals, whether that's grabbing more market share, boosting profits, or just becoming way more agile. Okay, so where does a transformation like this even start? Well, before you get to the how, you have to be crystal clear on the why. Kicking off an OPM initiative isn't just about tweaking a few processes. It's a major strategic move, usually in response to some very real and often painful business pressures. So what usually lights the fire for this kind of change? Well, maybe a competitor is suddenly eating your lunch, or maybe the company just went through a huge merger and now nobody knows who's doing what. But honestly, the most common one, it's when projects are just chronically late and way over budget. That's the moment when leaders look around and realize, you know what? The way we've been doing things just isn't going to cut it anymore. Right, so once you've figured out why you have to change, the next big question is, what are you actually going to do? This is where you build the plan. And this isn't something you can just wing. It demands a really structured, thought-out approach to actually formulate the program. Look, implementing OPM is a huge undertaking, so the best way to tackle it is with a two-step approach. This isn't about adding red tape, I promise. It's about building a rock-solid foundation so the whole thing doesn't collapse later. First, you formulate the high-level idea, and only then, once that's solid, do you move on to preparing the detailed plan for how to make it happen. And the difference between these two steps is absolutely critical. Think of formulation like an architect's first concept sketch. You're asking, is this vision even possible? Does the business case make sense? Then, preparation is the detailed engineering blueprint. That's where you map out the exact steps, the resources you'll need, and the final airtight financial justification before you ever break ground. So you've got your why and you've got your what. You have the blueprint. But a blueprint is just a piece of paper without the right crew to actually build the thing. So who do you need on the bus to make this journey happen? This really calls for a core team where everyone knows their part. You absolutely need a sponsor with the authority to knock down walls. You need a program manager who owns the day-to-day execution. Your PMO provides the standards and the guardrails. And, this one's key, you need an OPM integrator, someone who can be the champion for this change with the people on the ground. A weak link in this chain, especially a sponsor who's checked out, is probably the #1 reason these things fail. If you remember only one thing about the people side of this, make it this quote. An OPM initiative is a massive organizational change, and let's be honest, that means you're gonna hit resistance. The sponsor is the person with the political capital and the authority to get you the resources you need, provide that top-level guidance, and most importantly, clear the path when you run into roadblocks. Without that active support, the whole effort can grind to a halt. Okay, we have a plan, we have a team. But how in the world do you justify this huge investment of time, money, and energy? And maybe more importantly, how do you know if you're actually winning? It all comes down to measurement. At its heart, the business case for OPM is a pretty straightforward cost-benefit analysis. On one side of the ledger, you've got the investment, what it's going to cost to build and roll out these new ways of working. And on the other side, you have the benefits. And you have to be able to put real numbers on those benefits, whether it's higher profit margins on your projects or an actual increase in market share. Of course, the other side of that coin is the cost of doing nothing. And this isn't just about messy project management. This is about the real strategic bleeding that happens when OPM is poor. You've got delayed benefits, frustrated customers, lost market share, and shrinking profits. This right here, this is the pain that makes the investment worth it. So what's the end game for all this measurement? It's all about improving something called OPM maturity. And look, I know that sounds like corporate jargon, but it's not.
It's really just a simple way of describing how good an organization is at delivering on its promises, predictably, controllably, and reliably. It's about moving from a world of chaos and constant firefighting to a place where you can confidently say you'll deliver.
And that brings us to our final piece of the puzzle. Achieving this kind of maturity isn't a project you just finish and check off a list. No, it's a journey. It's a path of continuous improvement, and it has some very clear and distinct stages along the way. This journey is usually broken down into 5 levels. A lot of organizations, if they're being honest, start at level 1. Total chaos, pretty ad hoc. The whole point is to climb that ladder. Get some basic processes in place at level 2, get everything standardized and proactive at level 3, start using hard data to manage at level 4, and finally, reach that top tier of constant improvement at level 5. Each step up is a massive leap in your ability to control your own destiny.
But here's the reality check. Moving up just one single level on that maturity scale, that's a huge lift. This is not a quick win. On average, it takes 1 to 2 years to make that jump. That really underscores why this has to be a long-term strategic commitment from the very top.
And this is the final and maybe most important point. The goal is not always to get to level 5. Perfection can be the enemy of good. For many, many companies, the absolute sweet spot, the most valuable target, is hitting level 3. Why? Because that's the point where you finally have standardized, predictable processes. It's the moment the organization can finally feel its own pulse and deliver on its plans consistently. That's a game changer. So we'll leave you with this to think about. Wherever your organization is on that path today, what's the real strategic cost of just staying put, of not changing a thing? The answer to that question, well, that's the first line in your business case for making a change. Thanks for joining us.